So House of PMO has a mission statement, which is to develop yourself, to help develop others, and to also help develop the PMO profession. So we thought, having to think about yourself, about having your development and thinking about your development over the next 12 months in PMO.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I don't think enough people do is make some conscious thinking to have a 6 or 12-month plan about the areas they want to learn more about, develop some skills and develop, dare I say, competence in a number of different areas. And so, interestingly, from a House of PMO perspective, we do try to kind of provide a broad breadth of subject areas, recognising there's some kind of nice shiny new things that everybody wants to know about. So, we support Project Hack around the whole kind of data analytics and how that might or might not impact the PMO going forward. We've got the whole kind of lean agile, the value streams work that we're kind of progressing and providing access to. But I think one of the things that we find time and time again is that actually people need to get a good grasp of the fundamentals, the basics of how, as a PMO person, whether I be an administrator, an analyst, a manager or a director, how can I support my organisation in being more effective and efficient in delivering projects and programmes and portfolios for our organisation. And really that is where the competency framework started from, saying is it what should we be able to do, what should we be able to be competent at to doing each of those roles.
Yeah. Well, I think it's this interesting one about the basics, because it certainly comes up, like you say, time and time again. We get into, the standards of planning, risks and issues and benefits and resource management, all those ones that are all really difficult. But the interesting thing is that we remember that the PMO's role is to ensure that we continuously improve. Therefore, it is understanding the basics, but the basics are also changing as well. There's always things
techniques.
that are, and technology and things like that impact on those basics. So it's not always about the nice new shiny things.
Absolutely not
at all. But yeah, from a development point of view, though, I totally echo it. So how many people actually sit down and work out a proper plan? Perhaps you might have to, because of a performance review, and you have a development plan from that. But what about you as an individual, and actually taking a little bit more control over, what it is that, what excites you, what delights you, and what is it that you, it could be in the role that you're doing at the moment that actually there are some elements that you're not really doing much of. But you're interested. So, there are other things that around development doesn't necessarily have to be led by your organisation.
Absolutely not. And certainly the House of PMO, some of the events we have are outside office hours. And a lot of people attend those events off their own back, not necessarily because their organisation said, well, actually, there's a really good webinar you should attend, or actually, you must attend this conference. A lot of it is kind of self-driven because people want to develop themselves and improve their own abilities and competence to do their PMO role.
So maybe that's the first thing then in terms of developing yourself over the next 12 months is to learn how to develop yourself.
There is definitely a bit of that. And, when we did the competence framework, we didn't just write the competence framework and say, these are all of the things, all areas you need to be competent with. It's completely embedded in the book, or online if you're a member, you've got the online facility. We embedded the process to be able to do that assessment, so you could highlight those areas where perhaps you're not as competent as you could be in your current role, or where a lot of people are talking about development in terms of progression, perhaps they need to develop their competence to be at the next level.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, that is the reason that we were driven to do the PMO competency framework, because actually it is the first time, but you should be able to. I'm actually going to be able to do a self-assessment based on, where I am right now and the type of PMO that I work in and the type of role that I'm doing, to get a good idea about where there might be some gaps, or, forget about the gaps for a minute, where you're already really good at and that you can actually become even better at as well. I mean, we always talk about skills gaps, but actually, most of the time it's like, well, what's my strengths and I want to get better at those. But I think I don't think many people, I mean, I certainly, when I think back in my career, I had to do a competency assessment against a project manager led one. But actually, I was working at programs and portfolios. So what's the point of doing this, So I think it's there. So use it in terms of helping you to pinpoint where you want to think about development. Because, I think when people automatically think development, we thinking training courses, and we're not. I mean, yes, they can feature in there, but it's not all about, doing a training course. So you've got a thing that's...
Well, it's the old kind of 70-20-10, and I know we've done a video on this before, but it is worth reiterating when you're starting to think about your development. 70% is on the job, 20% is social learning, and only 10% is through formal training courses. And I think where, as an individual, you've got an opportunity to drive your own development is in that 70%, which is obviously the biggest part of the learning, is about thinking about those area of competence. And you're never going to be able to kind of do 20 in the next year. So, just kind of pick 2 or 3 and start thinking about where can I develop my competence. So I've already got the knowledge about what it's about. I've got some of the kind of the skills in terms of the soft skills that I've developed anyway. But I really need that experience to demonstrate my competence. And so, for example, I'm actually quite good at risk. And I've been supporting projects and I facilitate their risk workshops, and I'm very confident in terms of helping the project manager and the team members articulate their risks in the right way so the risk register is meaningful. I'm happy to work through some impact assessments to get the mitigation plan in place and do the budget associated with that. Absolutely, if anybody wants anything help on the project, I'm the person to go to. However, that doesn't necessarily translate directly in being competent at programme level or portfolio level, because there's an additional level of complexity at programmes, because you've now got to think about, well, actually, is this a programme level risk? We've got 3 projects on our programme with the same risk. How do I deal with that? So, even, as Lindsay said, where you're particularly good at something, start thinking about the context. So if I'm good in a project context, can I ask my manager to say, well, actually, over the next 6-12 months, can I have the opportunity to work with a programme manager and a programme around risk management? So again, starting to kind of broaden my level from just a competent at project level, but now I'm going to get competent at programme level.
I'll tell you what's been interesting, actually, I would say, from House of PMO, is thinking about all the people that we meet. I hear time and time again about how things can change quite suddenly. So you're quite happily working on a programme, but actually the organisation strategy is to do a lot more around, say, portfolio, and then suddenly you you find yourself, okay, so now our PMO is doing this, and I think, but I think it's more common actually than people realise, and I think it's almost like, for that, it's like thinking about what potentially might be coming down the line for, or as I said, is what really interests you and excites you. It's always thinking about, you're not necessarily going to be doing the same job within PMO, and certainly not necessarily the same context.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things is as well is the way we've kind of the competency framework is structured, which kind of helps you kind of plan the types of things you might want to get some experience of in the next year. We don't say learn portfolio management. We look at individual competences within portfolio management. So nobody would expect you to say, right, then I'm great with projects in every competence. Next year, I'm going to be great at portfolio in every competence. But you might want to focus on one particular area. So you're going to, risk is my specialism. I might do risk at project, programme and portfolio over the next year. But actually, if I'm doing the business case at a project and programme, what I might want to start thinking is expanding that into benefits. But actually what I quite fancy doing is seeing benefits from a portfolio level, because not only is that a new competence for me, but it will also improve my competence and understanding in business cases at a project and programme level. Yeah. So that kind of intertwinedness between competence areas in the kind of the competency framework, the skills obviously, and particularly the soft skills and the knowledge, are applicable to very much related areas. So the competence framework says, look, if you're doing these kind of things, the likelihood is you might want to branch out of those. So it gives you lots of help and assistance to say, this is your area that you're already competent in. Perhaps this is the area you want to move into as well.
Well, incidentally, if you're a member of House of PMO, you have access to be able to do your own self-assessment. We use a system called Camille, and everybody who's a paid member automatically can get access to it, which means you've essentially got the competency framework there. It's embedded within that system as well. If you're not a member, you can always buy the PMO competency framework book, but for doing the assessment online, it gives you that opportunity to play around with. Okay, so if I'm going to look at my assessment against the project level, I can quickly, at a flick of a button, see how that then looks at program. So if I do to do no more development, where are the gaps between what I know at project level and where I need to be at program level? And it's just literally at the click of a button.
And the great thing, you can print off a lovely picture.
Well, you can. There's always a lovely picture,
which is always helpful.
Yeah.
But I do want to kind of again go back to kind of what we try to do to support you from the House of PMO in your development. Is yes, we've got the competency framework, but we also have an ever increasing library of webinars, articles and papers against all of these subjects. So you can type in the name of the competence or a particular subject area, and I will guarantee, she says, and somebody's going to prove me wrong, that you'll probably get at least a dozen kind of things that will support your learning from the library.
Yeah. And, again, these are the things that we were talking about, the 70-20 10. These are some of the things that you can be doing around the 20% line, which is everything we've done is recorded. So there's videos to watch. There's obviously associated highlights and takeaways from each one of those things.
PDF downloads.
If you're time poor, there's things that you can just dip into. All the decks are there. So there's a lot to get through. But what about the 10% as well? Because we said it's not always about training courses, but sometimes it is. And the House of PMO has sweated blood and tears to essentially bring in something that Eileen and I wanted to do pretty much from the day that we first met 20 years ago, which was to have qualifications that were actually more aligned to the job. There's stuff out there which is about the concepts of PMO and how to set them up, but this has always been our dream, as it were, to have something that is very much aligned to the job that you will be doing. And it was a training course that I wanted many years ago, which was like, I just want somebody to tell me that yes, okay, I understand project life cycles and the processes and concepts behind some of the project manager, but what do you want me to do with them? And that's what drove us basically to take that competency framework and all those knowledge, skills and behaviours that are in there, but to actually then bring it into a practical training course and a certification based course, so people can feel proud about the fact that they have done the training, but it also means that they're showing the outer world that this is the role that I do, and I've got the associated professional training that goes with that. So there's a lot of different things. There's the on the job, there's the things like the doing that extra bit outside with all the things like House of PMO events and all of that kind of good stuff, as well as that more formal side as well. So things for you to think about over the next 12 months about where you're going to dip into and get that exposure.
I think the interesting thing about, again, even as just thinking about your development, one of the good things about those House of PMO Essentials certification, so there is one for each of the job roles within the competency framework, is actually it does a little bit of all of the competencies that are relevant to your role. So again, if you don't really understand what's involved in one of those competencies and kind of how it sits in with your role, actually doing one of those certifications will give you an insight into the project management processes and then what you can do as a PMO administrator or an analyst or a manager to actually kind of support those project and programme processes. And I think the other thing as well, and we've talked about this on several occasions, Lindsay, within the competency framework, in the broader competence definition, is knowledge, skills and behaviour. And behaviours, is a particular event of mine in terms of making sure we're actually demonstrate those right behaviours. And you don't often find kind of courses on those behaviours, but you certainly find courses on some of the skills, and particularly some of the soft skills, which are crucial to being a competent PMO anything. Being able to kind of ask good questions, being able to do facilitation, be able to influence, all of those kind of very much kind of transferable skills are also areas to kind of look for perhaps in a formal training course.
Yeah. So, if you've got 12 months to think about, it's never as long as you think it is, though, is it, 12 months? So, but yeah, if you'd like to, find out more about how House of PMO can help you think about your development in your PMO career, get in touch and we'll be more than happy to welcome you.